Hey everybody, I'm John Janawicz, member of Kegel's lane maintenance team and USBC Hall of Famer. Being involved with lane maintenance with Kegel for the last 22 years, and being a competitive bowler for almost all my life, one of the most commonly asked questions that comes to me on social media, via email, and sometimes right in person at the tournament site is, how do I play this pattern? This leads into a really complex answer, which takes into consideration the lane surface and its age, topography, the type and condition of the lane machine that's being used to oil the lanes with, the player's skill set, and the equipment he's using. Well, this is the next installment of an educational series of videos where we try lining up on different patterns and see if the pattern plays the way we think it should. We'll also show you why certain parts of the lane will play better than others, show why certain ball selections will work better than others, and since we have the unique setup of having one of the two most common lane surfaces used today in Brunswick Pro Lane and AMF SPL, you'll be able to see the differences of each lane surface's characteristics while featuring our different chemicals and lane machines. Today's show will be part one of the PL-31 formula. Now obviously ball motion with a set pattern will vary from center to center, but when patterns are created, they are created based on the lane surface that they will be bowled on. We're now back at the lab with the near flat lane surfaces at 2051 Longleaf Boulevard to test more patterns. Speaking about Area 2051, Kegel created this multi-purpose test center to be able to test new lane conditioners, to potentially do overflow batch testing for our lane conditioners, and to test patterns and new lane machines in a private and secluded environment away from the world-renowned Kegel Training Center. It also provides us in tech support an area to try to troubleshoot problems customers may have with their current and legacy machines, and a place to educate customers on lane machines and pattern theory. This is the ideal environment to see how true a pattern will play. So if it plays different than what you see at your center, you can chalk that up to differences in the lane machine, surface, and lane conditioner. Each month, we will be using a different lane machine and/or chemicals so that way you, the viewer, can see the difference in how the ball slows down. This month, we'll be using the Kegel Flex, along with Fire Lane Conditioner and our Defense Sea Cleaner mixed at 5-1. Fire has been one of the most commonly used conditioners in the Kegel family of conditioners for tournament play and was the conditioner used specifically at this center for Junior Gold. This month's pattern is the 2019 USBC Junior Gold U20 Boys Qualifying Pattern at Thunderbolt in Allen Park, Michigan. This pattern is 50 feet with a drop brush distance at 40 feet, and the volume is a below average 23.2 milliliters. Now when you look at the load structure, you can see that there's a lower than average number of 2-2s going forward for a sport compliant pattern, but you'll notice the 7 5-5s going forward. On the reverse pass, starting at 40 feet, there's also a very defined 6 loads at 15-15, followed by another bunch of loads at board 6 in reverse, which is really defining a steep slope on boards 5-6 to the outside. Knowing this information, we might have some good ball reaction around 5-6, and perhaps fading it near the 14-15 range near the pocket, but we'll find out shortly. Now if you don't know exactly what all these numbers mean and want to learn more about the specifics of reading patterns, click on the link for the webinar that Gus Falgine and Doug Dukes did on our YouTube page. For most tournaments in league, 10 minutes of practice is standard. You can get off about 30 total shots if you're ready to go and assuming no pin setter issues. Since we'll be testing 3 different zones on 2 different lane surfaces, that'll be about 10 shots in each zone total, which is basically 5 shots on each lane in each zone. One of the guidelines for finding out where you want the ball at the end of the oil pattern is taking the pattern length and subtracting 31 for a decent starting point of where you want your ball down the lane at the end of the pattern. While that is a decent generic rule and will hold true on a lot of medium distance and traditional blended patterns, there are some factors that will guide that exit point to the left or to the right of that number. Since this pattern is 50 feet, PL-31 would want us to be on the 19 board as the ball is exiting the pattern. Well, since the pocket is on board 17, this already puts this equation in question. So the goal today, as with all 5 installments of this series of videos, is to line up and see exactly where the best place to play is for maximum margin of error and pin carry on both the Brunswick Pro Lane and the AMF SPL lane. For Zone 1, I'll be attempting to throw a Storm IQ Tour Nano with my standard 65x5x35 layout straighter around 5 and see if that area around 5-6 is defined as it shows on the pattern sheet. Now when playing out, even at longer distances, I feel like you need a stronger cover, slower response ball to be able to keep the ball on line while still having a little shape down the lane, basically looking for that same kind of shape like you see in urethane balls on short patterns. The ball needs to slow down in that front half of the oil pattern. Now for zone 2, I'll use one of my favorite benchmark balls of all time, the Storm IQ Tour, with that same 65 by 5 by 35 layout, going a little straighter around the second arrow, seeing if there's anything in that flat, dead zone in between the shape laid out in the pattern 5 boards to the left and 5 boards to the right of me. And for zone 3, I will use one of my favorite balls on longer patterns, the Ebonite Mission Unknown, also with my JJ Special 65 by 5 by 35 layout. Don't laugh, that layout works for me. Now with the pocket being at 17, I'll have to use a little bit more angle and fall it back just to the right of the 3-pin, and I'll try doing that, starting the ball probably around like 23, 22 at the arrows, seeing if there's anything there where all those 15 to 15s are lined up down the lane, and trying to get it to that 13, 14, 15 zone down the lane. Now with the IQ Tour Nano, I tried to keep it straight in that 4, 5, 6 range, and I was also trying to keep my ball speed a little on the slower side to give the ball enough time for the ball to read the lane and face up in the oil. It's the only way for me and my rev rate to be able to get the ball to slow down in the back half of the lane, because if I use too much surface, it'll make me use too much angle to the front, which I know from experience is not what you want to do on 50 feet of oil. Oh, and that light 6-pin on shot 2, exhibit A of your ball not getting into the roll stage soon enough. As you can see, the shots even that I got on line are still going really long and coming up behind the head pin. And all the shots that I leak even just a little bit have no chance of making it up the hill, as shown in shots 4 and 5. My strike percentage is bad, I'm dead in the 210 zone when I don't ace it and keep it on line, not a good sign. So it's time to move on to the next zone. Now when I went straighter around 10 with the IQ Tour, I'm now in the flattest part of the pattern. I'm not getting any help from the oil pattern to steer the ball toward the pocket, and frankly, it showed. I had a good look as long as I got it on line, as the first and third shot showed, but I leaked the 2 shots in shot number 2 and number 4 to the right, and as you can see, both of them 210'd. Even on shot 5, which I got on line just like I did on shot 4, it didn't want to stay on line. Like I mentioned earlier, not the best sign. I like to see easier spares when I miss, and if you see me bowl enough, I need all the help I can get. And apparently, I'm needing more assistance than this zone of the lane is willing to give. Now when I went deeper with the Mission Unknown, it was in this zone with this ball where I felt like I wasn't walking on a tightrope. The first shot I threw good. Now the second shot I didn't throw very good, but I got an easy spare in the 3-pin. While I threw shot 3 really good, I also got it left again off my hand in shot 4, but then again also left another easy spare. I also leaked the last shot right, and it got back and almost struck for a 7-pin. Now when the lanes are on the tougher side, being able to get away with easy spares is huge, because if anything, it boosts confidence in that you won't feel pressured to have to throw a free 3-bagger to make up for that 210 or the 4-6. Now what I did on the SPL lane was I threw my first shots in each of the 3 zones in the same place that I threw on the Pro lane, so I can get a read on how much more friction the SPL lane had. In the outside zone, I kind of knew if I kept my feet in the same spot as I did on the Pro lane, where it was very easy for me to 210, I figured the extra friction would make it easier for the ball to face up to the pocket, and I was right. I still had to keep my speed down, but I was able to hit the pocket easier. And even in shot 4, where I got it right and missed it at the bottom a little bit, it still actually made it back for an easy 2-4 spare. That's a very good sign for me. Overall, I had pretty good reaction, and definitely a much better reaction than what I had in that same zone on the Pro lane. First shot for me going closer to 10, as you could see, didn't want to stay on line. So I made it 2 and 1 left, and the next shot looked pretty good. But one of the things that I always pay attention to is, what happens when I don't throw it great? Well, I got one in a little bit more on line, then 3, 6, 9, 10. I'm still feeling that early friction that I was feeling earlier on the outside, but now being closer to the pocket, since there isn't extra oil immediately inside of me at 10-11 like I had on the outside, it's now being reflected in the ball reaction by now me hitting the nose. Shot 4, I got one a little bit right for a 2-8-10, and then I got one right back in and then went right back to the 3-10. Granted, these weren't my greatest shots, but knowing that I'm in the flat part of the pattern, combining this with that 2-10, 3-10 ball reaction back to back, this is one Venus flytrap that I'm bailing out on right now. Now with the first shot with the Mission Unknown, the ball didn't stay on line, just kind of what I had expected from the other two zones. I moved 3 and 2 on the next shot, got it on line, but it still picked up too quick for the 4-10. I then made another 2 and 1 on shot 3, didn't make my best shot, but getting half the pins is not good. I moved my eyes 1 right down the lane for shot 4, and then the ball finally went flush. But even on the last shot, being 5 left of where I started looking farther right down the lane, the ball still wanted to grab too quick, and this is on the fresh. The early friction of the surface and being this close to the pocket is forcing me to use more angle. And even though this is an easy pattern by any means, the ball reaction still has me looking for the abort button. What ball and line would I start on each lane? On the pro lane, I would definitely be playing in that 22 to the 13, 14, 15 range down the lane, as it gave me easy spares when I missed, and it was easiest to get the ball to slow down in the right part of the lane since I was closer to the pocket, and it also gave me the most mistake area. Now playing out at 4, 5, 6, I had to be pretty slow, and even then, all the misses wanted to go light and I was susceptible to leaving 2-10s, which is a red flag in my book. Same thing with the IQ Tour, a little too easy to split when I missed for my liking. Like I mentioned in the shot sequence, one of the things I look at really closely is when you miss, do you leave something makeable? On the SPL lane, the IQ Tour Nano at 4, 5, 6 was clearly the better choice, as the higher overall friction of the SPL surface helped the ball slow down and faster in the front and get it rolling quicker, making it easier for me to hit the pocket. On the other hand, the added friction of the SPL for my game made the other two zones harder for me to be able to keep the ball on line. And since I was getting closer to the pocket, moving inside, the SPL surface was making me use a little bit more angle to the front, which historically on patterns of this length usually isn't a good thing. And it showed in the ball motion and what I was leaving when I missed. Now some of you might say, well JJ, what if you tried some different balls inside or surface changes? Well, let's look at the tournament that this pattern originates from, Junior Gold. At Junior Gold, you're only allowed to check in 5 balls, and they need to work over multiple patterns, and there are no surface changes once practice starts. If you use a spare ball and you have a urethane ball for short patterns, well, these are pretty much the only 3 balls you've got to choose from. I've also picked bowling balls that historically I've had success with in those particular zones of the lane for my game, so I would think those particular balls would be better choices than most anyway. Now I'd choose to play out on the SPL lane because I'm comfortable throwing it slower and playing outside of 7. Now for some of you that are more speed dominant, you might see better ball reaction at 10 or more than likely closer to the load structure at 15 and probably inside on both lanes. But if you're a little slower, rev dominant, and probably a little bit more of a outside player like me, this would be one example where thinking out of the PL-31 box could prove dividends. Hope you enjoyed this edition of JJ's Pattern Reviews, and stay tuned for more pattern reviews in the near future.